So before we jump in, I would like to introduce Thomas Germain, who is a reporter at Consumer Reports. Hi, Thomas. Where are you today?
I am in Brooklyn, New York.
And what is the ad that has most aggravated you, let's say, in the past 6 months?
In the past 6 months, so there is a really cool camera store that also sells audio equipment and other stuff called B&H in Manhattan that actually does a lot of shipping, all over the country. People might have heard of it. And I really love the store. It's a weird place. It's huge. They got lots of cool stuff. But I have just been bombarded with ads for B&H. And for a while, every YouTube video I would watch, I'd see the same ad or one of like 3 different ads for B&H beforehand. And it just got really annoying, even though I love the company. And using some of the techniques that we're going to talk about today, I was actually able to go in and say, I'm tired of seeing this ad. I gave Google, who runs YouTube, some feedback. I went in and adjusted my settings a little bit. I don't see this ad anymore. My life is 1,000 times better. Now I don't have any problem at all. But no, I mean, this is a serious issue, I think, because your attention is really important. And that's what ads are trying to get a hold of. And hopefully after today, you'll have a little bit more tools at your disposal to take control over the experience you're having online and even in the real world.
There are 2 other Consumer Reports people who are with us today. We have Amira Dalla, who you're mostly going to be seeing in the Q&A section. She will be furiously answering as many questions as she can over the course of that the next hour. And then we also have Calvin Jackson, who you're mostly going to be seeing in the chat, dropping in links, saying hi, and engaging there. So that's the Consumer Reports team today. Today, we're going to be, like we've been saying, talking about ads. And I want to say now that there are no single cures to the sometimes thousands and thousands, the barrage of ads that we see every day. But as Thomas mentioned, what we're going to be talking about are some tricks and some ways of gaining some version of control back. And there are, as I'm seeing in the chat, scrolling by, all sorts of reasons and ways that people feel like they've lost that control. But one of the reasons that the big tech companies that are serving us these ads get away with so much of the data collection and ad targeting that they get away with is because the algorithms that they have built to serve us ads are so complicated that individuals like us sometimes have trouble wrapping our brains around how they work, let alone figuring out how we can regain some kind of control. So our goal today is to learn together about how these algorithms play and see where we can inject and where we can change things. So Tom just told us about one of the ads that's really, really bugging you. How did B&H, I mean, you don't know specifically for any individual ad, but in a general sort of way, how do ads find their way to you? And platforms like Facebook or Google, they desperately want to kind of show you things that you want to see. You said you're a fan of B&H, but what is that? What are they trying to do, and how are they failing when they show you so many ads at once, or so many of the same ad at once?
That's a great question. And I guess maybe a good place to start is by zooming out a little bit, right? Facebook and Google are the biggest tech companies in the world for the most part, right? And they've revolutionized the internet and all different parts of our lives. But I think what some people don't realize is the most revolutionary thing that they've introduced is a massive change to how advertising is delivered, right? That's how these companies make money. For the most part, the vast majority of their income comes from selling advertising. And the promise of digital advertising is that brands are able to reach individual people who are actually interested in these products and are more likely to buy them, which is different from how it used to be, right? You'd see an ad on TV, it would go out to everyone in the Cleveland area or whatever it was. Now, tech companies are telling these companies that want to advertise, we know who is interested in what, and we can get your ads right in front of those people and not waste any money on anyone else. So what they're doing is constantly collecting information about what you're doing online and trying to use that to come up with the things that you may or may not be interested in. And it's been convincingly successful enough that advertising has exploded. We're seeing more ads today than we ever have before. In the 70s, I think the number that I read was we saw an average of like 200 to 500 ads per day when you factor in, radio and TV advertising and billboards and stuff like that. Now we're seeing 5,000 to 10,000 ads every day. And some of them are effective, some of them are annoying, some of them could even be offensive. And the way that it works is they're taking more and more moments of our lives and turning them into data points, right? So things you search for online with your location data, it's all the stores that you shop at, the kinds of places that you go every day. Because of that location data, they know who your friends are, right? So they can use what your friends are interested in to make interpretations about what you might like. Even things like your purchases on credit cards often get roped up into these data systems in ways that are supposed to be anonymous to help companies figure out what you're trying to buy. And they're constantly coming up with and experimenting with new techniques. And I think it goes way beyond what the average person is aware of or even capable of understanding because it's so technical. But the good news is these companies, Facebook and Google and all the other online advertisers, they want to show you stuff that you like and are more likely to buy. So there are ways that you can give signals to the internet at large about what you do and don't want to see. And you can take a more active role in that. And there's a couple of different things we're going to be talking about. And in addition to that, there are also settings that these companies give you that I think most people don't even know about or don't take advantage of.
So Thomas's audio is dropping out for me for a second. So Thomas,
now I am losing you. I heard you say that I was dropping out, but we're starting this poll here, right?
So you do one thing for me, see if we can drop your.
I turned off my camera here to see if
let's see if that helps at all. Okay, so I'm going to launch a poll. So it's my audio that's giving giving everybody trouble. Okay, well, hopefully Thomas can lead even more then. So I'm glad to hear that Thomas's audio was working. And you can stay on and I'll drop off video. How about that?
Yeah, let's see if that helps.
So the poll that you should have up on your screen right now, and this is a thoroughly unscientific poll, but as Thomas was saying, there are a bunch of ways that ads that feel sometimes deeply personal can get to you. And we want to know what you all think about the different tactics that you've, how are advertisers finding you where you are? Is it tracking if you've looked at an ad, tracking if you've clicked on an ad, tracking if your roommate bought a product in a store, tracking if a friend Googled the product for you at some point, and or all of the above. I'm going to leave this open for one more second. And thank you all in the chat. Sounds like Alan's probably the one having the internet problems today, not Thomas. So I will stay off camera for a while and see if that helps everybody out.
So far, it's better.
Excellent, excellent. That's what I like to hear.
70% participation in this poll here. Let's give it another second or two, and then we'll close it out. We got a lot of people saying all of the above.
And like we said, you're not being graded on this. Don't worry if you don't see the thing popping up in front of you in any way, shape, or form. But
right,
I'm going to go ahead and end it now. End it now. And we think the answer is all of the above. So Thomas, there are some alarming things that we just talked about. Tracking an ad, tracking if someone clicked on an ad makes sense in our understanding of the ad ecosystem. Okay, sure, I identified that I would like to know more about this product because I clicked on the ad. But tell us about some of the more alarming things on this list. Tracking if a roommate bought a product in a store, how is that triangulated back to me?
Right. So, one thing that I, as a privacy reporter, and other people who report on privacy hear all the time, and it's going to be maybe a little controversial. A lot of people think that their phones are listening to them, right? Because you say something to a friend or a family member, and all of a sudden you're seeing ads for this product or this service or this trip to Ireland or whatever it is. But in fact, there's a ton of evidence that isn't actually happening, that your phones aren't listening to you. And there's never been any conclusive evidence, aside from these anecdotes, that these companies are actually doing it. I think the best argument is if you've ever tried talking to Siri or doing speech to text, it really doesn't work very well. And that's when you're speaking directly into your phone, and it's not going to be much better when it's in your pocket. But I think a much creepier idea is that ad targeting systems work so well that it seems like they must be listening to you. And that, I think, is alarming. And there's lots of ways that people don't think of, right? So if you've got a roommate, right, Google knows that you two live together. You're always on the same Wi-Fi network. Your phones are always accessing the same cell towers. You're getting products delivered to the same address, et cetera, et cetera. If you meet up with someone, right, your location data might show that you were both at the same coffee shop, sitting at the same table on the same Wi-Fi network for a couple of hours. And what is surprisingly common is they'll take things that other people that are associated with you are doing, and if they go looking for them, they say, well, maybe you're interested in it too, and they show you the same ad or the same topic, right? So, and it can be everything. It can be the things your friends are searching for. It can even be the things they've actually bought. Google has relationships with credit card companies and tons of retailers to analyze the actual purchases that people are making and tie that into their internet experience. So there's tons of different ways, and it can be really insidious. And we're really just scratching the surface here. I think if people understood what was really going on, it would be pretty alarming.
Well, so so we talked about like location tracking. So I know that, or Google knows that my wife and I live in the same house because we share the address and because our cell phones are always in the same place at the same time. How about, or I guess, what should people be thinking about how broad that web goes? In our example, it's like roommate purchased something at a store. So that includes all of our credit card information. That
Right.
includes all of our shopping habits. And so what like, how wide should we assume that net goes or that chain, I guess is a better metaphor, that chain of information?
Well, it goes pretty wide. I mean, I've heard about everything from public records, right? Like real estate purchases and things like that. There are divorce records that are filed with the government, get bought and sold. There's scans of people's driver's licenses that end up in facial recognition databases. It's just about anything that you can think of. One thing I think people don't even realize is companies are collecting data when you're just scrolling. They can tell if you looked at something, right? You're scrolling through Instagram or Facebook and you see something and you stop scrolling for a second and you're hovering your mouse over something. They're collecting data at every moment, right? They can even tell what you're looking at, and that will go into what is and isn't more likely to get shown to you on a later date in an ad on whatever website or social media platform you can be using. The extent to which all of our lives are being turned into data points for the advertising industry really can't be overstated. And somebody in the chat here is talking about we need a privacy law for the internet. I think that's something a lot of people don't realize. I write about privacy practices that people find really alarming, like using health information or something like that. And people say, well, what's going to happen now that you've discovered that, data about mental health is going to be used for advertising? The answer is nothing, because there are basically no laws about privacy in the United States. Even though most people think that there are, companies can basically do whatever they want with your data as long as they're not lying to you about it. And I think that what's actually going on the internet and in digital advertising really runs contrary to what people want and expect their privacy protections should be.
So let's talk a little bit. You just mentioned one of the larger sort of consumer harm issues around health and health data. But let's talk more specifically, like about the things that ads and which ads we see. How does that matter? Because our example, however flippant from the beginning about B&H, that's a piece of annoyance. That's something that we might not want to see. That's like the ad that you might not want to see. But unpack that. Why does not seeing an ad run deeper than just this is an annoying thing that I don't like?
Right. So on the surface level, it's like, I'm looking at a screen, they show me an ad, they show me some piece of content that I don't want before the piece of content that I do want. What's the big deal, right? And that's not a bad argument, but I think that it runs a little deeper than that, right? Like, your attention is a precious thing. You only have so much time and energy throughout the day. And not only that, but there's a lot of things that you might not want to see ads about that can be particularly upsetting. Like, just to paint a hypothetical, right? Like, or I guess not a hypothetical. I had a friend this happened to. A friend of mine and his partner were getting ready to have a baby. They got pregnant, and then along the way, they had a miscarriage. They lost the baby. It was a tragedy. It was really upsetting. The internet had figured out that they were getting ready to be new parents, and they started seeing all of these ads for baby products and stuff for parents, even after they'd lost the pregnancy. And that just continued on. It was a reminder of this tragedy in their life when they're just trying to move on. There's also, you think about people who have problems with alcohol or drugs, seeing ads on the internet, or all kinds of stuff. You can see things that are upsetting or disturbing, and you aren't given obvious controls over that. Another thing that's really important is, I don't think people realize that when you see an ad on the internet, right, there's this like little square that's showing you the ad. That little piece of code that's running that ad is also collecting information about you when you see it, right? They're recording that you saw the ad so they can later see, did you buy the product? Did the ad work? So not only is the quest for more information for targeted ads fueling all of the privacy violations that we hear about all the time, but the ads themselves are collecting your data. Then there's also, if you think about, like, I've heard stories where ads revealed people's sexual orientation, or I heard a story about someone who was getting cancer treatment, right? And they were getting ads for cancer drugs. And then during a meeting, they were sharing their screen and an ad for the cancer drug showed up. And they didn't know whether anyone put two and two together, but it can give away your sensitive information. Or if you're just shopping for like a birthday gift for a friend, they look over your phone, they see an ad for the gift. It can leak sensitive information that you might not want it to. But I think most insidious of all, and this is a little bit, it's a little bit counterintuitive, but there have been a lot of studies that show that the ads that we see online can change the things that we believe about ourselves, the kind of people that we think we are, because people assume that targeted advertising is really effective. And therefore, if they see an ad, they think, well, I subconsciously, a lot of people go, I must be supposed to see this ad. So I must be the kind of person who this ad is trying to target. So if they're showing an ad for a weight loss or whatever it is, you think, oh, I must need to lose weight. It can have a really dramatic effect on our psychology in a way that we really don't understand, because all this stuff is so new. And with ads leaking into more and more of our daily lives, I think those effects are more pronounced than we realize.
Yeah, I think that last piece, we think maybe about advertising's effects to make us think about keeping up with the Joneses, but the insidious ways in that it reshapes who we think we are by what we are shown. I think that's really interesting. So let's actually, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for 1 second here, and Thomas is going to take the wheel, and we're going to dive in to what we can do to control the ads.
I am going to share my screen here. Just
while Thomas is starting this up and looking at Google specifically, so we're going to take you through the kind of big 3 platforms and what you can do with those initially. I hear people who are saying in the chat, show us what we actually have to do. But I do want to say that understanding the nature of how all these ads are working is actually a very important piece of this puzzle. So we are going to show you some things that you can do. So Thomas is going to start off now as I'm talking. Thomas, go ahead. He's going to click over on his show how we can change the Google settings specifically. But there are a lot of different things that go into this process beyond what we're going to be able to actually walk you through today.
Yeah. So to get started, if you have never gone into your Google privacy settings, you're missing an opportunity, because there's no such thing as perfect privacy. You can't stop Google from spying on you, but there is a lot you can do to change what information is collected and how it's used. So if you go to google.com, right, and you sign in and you click on this little icon up here in the top right, you'll find a button that says Manage My Account, and it's going to take you here, right? These are your Google account settings. There's tons of them. They're kind of confusing. We've written a guide. You can go to the Consumer Reports website, type in how to use Google privacy settings. We've got all kinds of stuff beyond ads. But where you want to go is privacy and personalization right here, manage your data and privacy. There's going to be a ton of options here. I recommend that you go through them all and make some decisions about how you want your data managed. But for today, we're going to focus on the advertising settings. So you click there, and there's a couple of different things you can do here, right? The first one is just this overall ads personalization, right? Google is constantly collecting information about you. So are tons of other apps and services and companies. They're sharing that information with Google. But with this setting, you actually have some control. So if you turn this off, it's not going to turn off targeted advertising altogether, but it's going to put in place some limits that break the chain of data information flows and make it so some kinds of information are off limits. And if you turn this off, I think it's going to have a dramatic effect on the number of ads you see that are targeted to you in particular. Google's going to make a little bit less money. You can decide whether or not you feel bad about that. I have mine on because the more creepy personalized ads I see, the more stories I can write for Consumer Reports. But going beyond that, you turn that off and it's going to get rid of all of these data points here. But here is a list of topics that Google has decided I'm interested in, right?
I'm just going to say again, for everybody who is worried that this is going by too quickly, one, we're recording this, and two, we will send around a blow-by-blow recap of all of these settings. So just let it wash over you right now. Don't worry too much about taking good notes. We'll get you all the stuff that you need to know for your own edification later.
Yeah, this is a high level view. We're going to send you step-by-step instructions, so don't worry about getting every minute here. But this is something you'll see. These are topics that Google has decided you're interested in. Some of them I am interested in audio equipment. But let's say I didn't want to see ads on this topic. I can hit turn off here, and then Google promises to try and show me less ads on that subject. And try is a key word here. These systems are so complicated. Google doesn't even actually have complete control over its own algorithms, which I think is kind of alarming. So you can go through, if you know there's something that bothers you. Let's see if, oh, you know, B&H is not here. I'll show you the example. B&H Photo, the camera store I was talking about. We can go down here and see ad topics that I've turned off. Here is B&H Photo. Here's those videos that I didn't want to see anymore. I was seeing tons of ads for, I think, the movie Thor. I got really sick of that. I turned that off. I don't see these ads anymore. Stuff actually works. You might think that these tools that they're giving you don't really do anything. They might not do what privacy advocates wish they do, but they do have a serious effect, and it's worth taking a crack at it. You can also see here, Google has done something that Facebook started, where they picked out a couple of particularly sensitive topics for certain people. And you can go and tell Google you don't want to see ads on alcohol or dating or a couple other things like that. And this, I think, specifically applies to YouTube, but in general, Google, I think some people don't realize, Google and Facebook run most of the ads you see everywhere. And that includes the apps that you use that aren't owned by Google, that includes websites all over the internet, that includes sometimes ads you see on TV are operating on Google and Facebook's ad networks. And if you go into your Google and Facebook accounts, you can make some changes that will apply across the entire internet. So it's really worth your time.
All right, I'm going to take control back for just 1 second, because we're then going to kind of do a quick recap of what Thomas just told us. But so a couple of big things that Thomas just said there that I want to zoom back in on. One is remember that the big three, or maybe kind of even the big two that we're talking about today, Google and Facebook, have an incredibly wide reach on the ads that you see. So you don't have to be on those platforms. You don't have to be anywhere close to what appears to be a Facebook branded space for these things we're talking about today to have some sort of effect. So just on the screen right now, you're going to navigate to Google's ad settings, which you start off by going up to the Google, your little picture in Google, and then your profile, and then the Google ad settings. Click the icon on the top right, manage your Google account, manage your data and privacy, then scroll down to ad settings. We do also recommend that you do like all kinds of checking in on Google privacy. They do actually give you a lot of opportunity to make changes that you'd like to see. And just again, to recap, you can turn off personalized ads altogether, which will hopefully decrease a lot of the things that feel particularly targeted to you. You can select advertising topics to avoid, and you can avoid certain sensitive subjects in the ads that you see on YouTube and other places. I'm gonna, before we jump into Facebook actually, and I give you back control, Thomas, Linda in the chat picked up on some of your language here that I think is really good. She wants to know, see fewer but not see none?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
That's a good catch, right? So like I said, the only real law that's regulating technology in the United States is that companies can't lie to you. The FTC, in its charter, one of the main things that it regulates is that companies are not allowed to use unfair or deceptive business practices. What that basically means is if they tell you that something is going to happen or that they're going to do something, they have to abide by that promise. If they say, I'm going to collect all your data and use it for every creepy thing I can possibly think of, that's fine. If they say they're not going to do that and then they do so, they're breaking the law. So they aren't promising that if you turn off the alcohol topic, that you're never going to see another ad about alcohol, because there isn't anyone going through and checking these ads one by one. There's hundreds and thousands, millions of ads being built every day. No one is checking them. They've got algorithms going through and flagging some of them. And like I was saying earlier, these systems are so complex that no one has a real handle over them. They're using what's called deep learning, where they tell the algorithm the outcome that they want, and then it has these millions and billions of data points that it analyzes, switches that it can turn on and off, changes it can make to try and get to that desired outcome. In this case, show the most relevant advertising. Google doesn't have total control over it, so they're not promising that their own tool is going to work. But I do think that if you turn these topics off, they are going to work a lot of the time, and it is going to make a big difference. But like Linda is saying here, it's not a perfect solution.
So with that said, let's dive into the big number two, Facebook, Meta, call it what you will. Let's call it Facebook.
Let's call it Facebook.
So now you're seeing the Thomas's behind the scenes Facebook. Take us away.
This is my personal Facebook account. And what you're going to want to do here is, again, there's tons of Facebook settings. Facebook has 22 pages of settings that you can look through. It takes a lot of time. And again, we've written an article about the most important ones, what they do, how to find them on our website. But what you want to do is you want to click again on the little logo with your profile photo in the top right up here, hit settings and privacy, then ignore everything else and hit settings again. And this is going to take you to a list of settings. There's tons of them. But here we want to scroll down. You can do this on your phone as well, in the Facebook app if you have it, and go to ads. You're going to see something that's very similar to what Google offers you, right? This interface is a little bit confusing, right? You can see here advertisers that have shown you ads recently. There's one you know you don't like, you can go and click hide ads. But more useful, I think, it's ad topics. This is just like what we saw on Google. But I think this one is interesting because they show you more. And it's kind of an example of how I think online advertising is a big lie, right? There's tons of stuff here that I'm not interested in at all. I mean, some things they get right, like I do like modern art. How's everyone worth? I don't know what that is. Telephony, mobile phones. I don't think I'm particularly interested in mobile phones. Eating. I guess, yeah, I'm interested in eating. I don't know if that's valuable information, but I can go on any one of these and say, I want to see fewer ads about travel to Puerto Rico. A better strategy is if you know there's something that you don't want to see, you can type it in here, right? And again, it recommends these potentially sensitive subjects. On Facebook, you can even say, I don't want to see anything about politics or social issues, which is their word for things like the abortion debate and stuff like that, gun control.
Now, let me step in here and flag one major thing that we're talking about here that I don't want people to get confused. When we're talking about Facebook, we're talking about the ads that you are served. That can look a lot like posts in your Facebook feed, but it is, as far as Facebook knows, categorically different than what your friends and relations are posting.
Very important.
We will talk later on, maybe a little bit if we have time, about the general algorithm and how these things all feed into each other and how they are all connected. But right now we're talking about ads that you are served. So this is not going to stop your uncle from posting wild, outlandish political theories. It will, however, stop the political advertisements that the Facebook ad settings are sending you.
That's exactly right. And like Alan said, we've got an article that I put together on things you can do that will help you avoid your uncle's posts. But right now, we're just talking about the ads themselves. So here's the topics that Facebook recommends. You can type in, let's say I really don't like ads about American cheese. I can turn off the American cheese topic. It's weirdly specific. And this is a good use of your time if you know there's something that is bothering you that you're tired of seeing. Then after you're done playing around with this, go over to your ad settings. And these, again, are going to be, I think, more useful, right? That's like fine tuning. This is limiting data collection writ large. There's a couple of important ones. Data from your activity from data about your activity from partners. This is millions of websites and companies send Facebook data about everything you're doing online and even sometimes in the real world. And Facebook uses that data to show you ads. And by default, the setting that allows them to do whatever they want with that information is turned on. You can go in here, you can turn it off. You say, Facebook, I don't want you to use all the data that other companies send you for advertising. It's written in this way that allows them to get away with some other stuff. Like Facebook is pointing out here, you're still going to see the same number of ads, but the data that's allowed to be used for those ads is going to change. And this is another great way to break that link in the chain of all this data that's flowing around the world about you. Again, you can go through here. This lets you say, I don't want to see ads that are related to a couple of specific topics. This is kind of interesting depending on your particular situation. And then this one, ads shown off of Facebook. Like I was saying earlier, right? Facebook isn't just showing you the ads you see on Facebook and on Instagram. The ads you see all over the internet, the vast majority of them are served by networks that Facebook and Google built. So if you're seeing an ad on CNN.com or Fox's website, there's a really good chance that Google or Facebook is running that ad. So this control will determine whether the things that you do on Facebook can be used to show you ads across the rest of the internet. And again, it's not a 100% perfect tool for that, but it is going to make a big difference. And if you don't like Facebook doing all this weird stuff with your data, this is a great way to place some limits on that. And I think
there's one question that came in the chat that I think is super relevant to this part of the discussion. If you turn off the top level ad personalization, so if your general setting is to toggle that off, is there any advantage to briefly turning it on and then turning off these individual detailed categories?
Well, that's a good question. I guess Facebook and Google and the entire advertising industry makes the argument that people like seeing ads that are relevant to you, right? That people don't like seeing ads that have nothing to do with their life, that are unrelated to products that they want to buy. And sure, I can think back to, my days of spending a lot of time watching TV. I would see the same ad over and over for a product I didn't like. That got really annoying. I'm not sure if what Google and Facebook say about how people like targeted ads is true or not. I know sometimes I hear a lot of people who say they like the products that they see ads for on Instagram, and you can turn all these settings off. You're still going to see targeted ads. They're still going to find ways to try and show you ads that are relevant to you, that are based on your activity. So I don't think there's a real distinct advantage to leaving these settings on. There's other settings on Google and Facebook where if you turn them off, it'll break some things. They're always easy to switch back on. I wouldn't want that to scare anyone off. But this one here, I don't think there's really any distinct advantage to having these on. If you would rather just say there's one particular topic that I don't want to see, you can go ahead and do that too. This is more for the person who just doesn't like that their attention is being treated like this barrel of oil that's a commodity for tech companies to buy and sell. And
that's a good analogy.
Do about that.
That's a good analogy. Yeah, that's really interesting and gets me to a larger question of what rights we all have to our own attention and our own privacy. So let me regain sharing screen here. And I'm just going to go back over what Thomas just told us. You're going to find the Facebook section by going to the down arrow on the top right of the Facebook homepage. You're going to go to settings and privacy. You're going to go to settings again. Ignore everything else, go back to settings. Then you're going to find the menu on the left and choose ads.
I just want to point out really quickly that that's for Facebook when you're accessing it through the web browser. The instructions are a little different on your phone.
Great. And we will also be talking about, we're going to send you all this information about both browser and phone setting locations. So basically 2 major setting options. If you want to see ads to be less targeted overall, data about your activity from partners and ads shown off of Facebook, go to both of those. You can also go through lists of advertisers to toggle off specific topics. And here are the places that you find those under ad topics and then also under ad settings. I'm actually not going to have us go through the same on-screen look at Instagram because I want to make sure we have time for people's questions. But just know that because Facebook and Instagram are under the same umbrella, not only is it similar like it's Google, but it's very similar because they are built by the same sort of logic and under a lot of the same umbrellas. There is some fine tuning, however, that you can do in Instagram as opposed to the overall Facebook commands. So we recommend that you do go in there and mess around after you've done the maximum work you can under the Facebook umbrella. But I want to get us into a few other important ad control tools. So we've talked about ways of breaking the chain here that look like setting the ways that people serve you ads to being something that is more what you want rather than what they want. We also have some ways to stop ads from appearing on your screen. And again, none of these are silver bullets, as we will show you shortly. But we do recommend people use an ad blocker. That's only going to work if you're in a browser. I believe most ad blockers are not sort of like in your phone necessarily, but it's a browser on a ad blockers are specific to different browsers you use to access the internet, depending on your computer browsing habits. And we're not going to give you, some people have been mentioning their ad blocker of choice in the chat here. Consumer Reports is pro ad blocker, but what the specific ad blocker is up to you. And it probably depends a lot on which browser you use and how to customize that. So we recommend going and looking based on your browser of choice for the ad blocker that works the best for you. I've said a lot about browsers right there. Our other recommendation here is if you care about privacy, stop using Chrome. Thomas, take us through, everyone's been talking about DuckDuckGo in the chat here. What is DuckDuckGo and what is the privacy distinction between DuckDuckGo as a browser and DuckDuckGo as a search engine, and break that all down for us.
Yeah, so DuckDuckGo is a pretty cool company, and their business model is privacy. Unlike other technology companies who make all their money collecting as much data about you as possible and turning that data into advertising dollars, DuckDuckGo has a model where they're trying to convince people to join the platform, and they're making money in a way that's slightly less lucrative. So the example with DuckDuckGo's search engine, right, is when I type in sneakers, I might see what are called contextual advertising, where I'm seeing ads for sneakers because I am on a page about sneakers. That's not data about me. It's not being collected. DuckDuckGo makes a lot of really strong promises about privacy. They've got a search engine that's really cool. It's an alternative to Google. They've also got a browser which you can use on your phone, or I believe on a computer as well. Is really cool. Personally, I really like Firefox, which is made by a company called Mozilla that Consumer Reports has partnered with in the past. They also make a lot of promises about protecting your privacy and blocking cookies and things like that. Brave is another one that a lot of people like. We're getting some good questions in the chat here. I see somebody asking about incognito mode. Incognito mode is good.
Also Safari, I want to flag Safari
is,
too.
yeah, so someone mentioned Safari. Safari is great, although I do want to point out that for all of the claims that Apple makes about privacy, Apple collects a ton of information about you, and they operate their own advertising network. So Safari is a great browser. It is better than Chrome, which is basically spyware. But I wouldn't put as much faith in Apple's privacy promises as I would in DuckDuckGo's or Mozilla's, which makes Firefox. But
yeah, stepped on the incognito comment though. Go back to that.
Sure. So incognito mode, right? We've all heard about this. I recommend caution when you're using it, because incognito mode does not prevent companies from tracking you altogether. What it does do is it prevents certain kinds of cookies, which, what cookies are is actually bizarrely complicated. But it's these little tags that companies' websites put on your browser and follow you across the internet. Incognito mode will block certain kinds of cookies, but don't use incognito mode and assume that everything you're doing and that browser tab is going to be private, because that's just not true. But it is a good way if you're searching for a birthday gift or something. You can use incognito mode, and you're less likely to see ads related to the things you're doing in that incognito tab. But don't think of that as a cure-all. So yeah, people are saying in the chat, people are talking about the browsers that they love. Firefox is great. I love it because of its privacy practices, but there's lots of good ones. And one more thing that I want to get to that I actually saw someone mention here in the chat. You may not realize it, but every ad that you see on the internet, for the most part, gives you an opportunity to give feedback on that ad. There's usually like there's 3 dots in the top right corner. Sometimes you can right click on an ad and you can say sometimes, I don't like this ad, or you can report the ad and say that it's showing you things that you aren't interested in. And like we were saying at the beginning, the whole business model here, right, is that Google and Facebook and other advertising companies say they're showing you ads related to things that you're interested in. So if you go and tell the companies, I'm specifically not interested in this topic, which is what we were doing with those topics, but you can even do it with individual ads, it will have an effect. It's not guaranteed to stop showing you that particular ad. Someone's saying here they've tried it and it doesn't work. It's not a guarantee, but it can make a difference. And if there's a particular ad that's bothering you, I recommend seeing what feedback can you give on that particular ad in the menus there. It can make a big difference. And I know in my own personal experience, it's gotten rid of some ads that have annoyed me in the past. Oh, and ad blockers. Do we have a minute to talk about that? Or are we running out of time here?
No, we're okay with ad blockers. I just want to take people through a quick example of the ad blocker that I had on my machine earlier today. And for everyone who is asking about VPNs, I see you, I hear you. We have an entire workshop on VPNs, which we did fairly recently, so it's still pretty much up to date. And we will be dropping the link to go find that and other workshops as we go. VPNs are not going to make, that's not going to dramatically change what we're talking about today, though, with ad targeting. VPNs are more useful for if you don't want people to know your location. I guess it's probably a part of breaking the chain as well, but I will recommend a whole different webinar to unpack VPNs. So what you're seeing on my screen right now is what it looked like for me to access CNN.com without an ad blocker on. So this is just what CNN thinks I'm interested in. And you can see the same ad taking up a giant chunk of the top of the screen, which then followed me down. And then also the same ad is down there in the bottom corner right here. Then I turn my ad blocker on and refresh the page. And the first thing that I got is CNN being like, hey, this is stepping on our ability to make money. Please don't do that. So they had a pop-up, and I mentioned this because ad blockers, like a lot of the different things we're talking about, might actually change your experience of accessing certain websites. Websites might not be able to do the thing that they want to do, and that break, it shouldn't keep you from being able to access the materials that you want to see, but sometimes it does. So then after I got around this little pop-up, I was back at the same site, but I want to point out that my ad blocker wasn't being perfect. This is a smaller ad and it's less targeted to me, but it is an ad. And this is also an ad that they are very clearly still trying to serve me, regardless of the fact that the ad is supposed to be blocking that space. So Thomas, talk about ad blockers, talk about what they can and can't do. What should people know about when they're considering one?
So what an ad blocker can't do is prevent you from ever seeing ads ever again, even if you'd like to. We're seeing the evidence right in front of us. What an ad blocker does do is it basically, when you go to a website, right, in a fraction of a second, there's this block of code. And if we see up at the top here where it says Stand for Peace in Ukraine, right, this is originally blank. They don't know when you go to the website what ad they're going to show you. And the website makes a call to these servers that are running advertising. It says, this guy is here. Do you know who he is? Do you know what he's interested in? Show me, pick the most valuable ad and show it to me, and then pay me for serving that ad for you, right? What ad blockers do is they have a list of basically the domains, the addresses of these advertising servers, and they block them. They say, don't let any traffic go from this person's computer to this advertising server. And websites can tell that you're doing it. They really don't want you to, right? CNN makes, and I'm not picking on CNN here, this is how almost every website, except Consumer Reports, works on the internet. They make their money on advertising. We don't. And I think it makes us a little more exciting than a lot of our competitors. That's beside the point. This is just how the internet works, right? Nothing wrong with CNN in this particular instance. They don't want you to use an ad blocker. They make a bid, please turn it off. Sometimes they won't let you see the content and all. It's always easy to go in. Your ad blocker just adds a little icon to your browser. You can go in and say, I want you to whitelist this site. Like, don't leave the ad blocker off when I'm on CNN or whatever your website of choice is. So if it does break things, it's easy to turn it off. So what it's done here is it's blocked some of these advertising servers, but there's others that have sneaked through, right? This whatever advertising company was running the Stand for Peace in Ukraine ad here, it slipped through. But if you turn an ad blocker on, depending on which one you use and depending on how effective it is, you're going to see fewer ads across the internet. That's good, not just because your attention is being less monopolized, but also because, again, the ads themselves are collecting data about you. And if the code that's running the ad breaks, less data is going to be collected. So I really do recommend that people experiment with them.
So here's my dad joke for the day. We want you to ignore Fleetwood Mac. In everything that you are doing, our advice is please do break the chain. Break the chain of advertiser knowledge of you. And that can be through ad blockers. That can be through controlling how Google and Facebook work. And I actually don't think I want to get to questions, and we only have 3 minutes left. So I don't think we're going to spend as much time as we were thinking unpacking the larger ways in which these algorithms are starting to control our lives. But just remember that advertising is one chain, and the things that we've been talking about today are sort of breaking up the moments that people are able to get a full picture of who you are online. That applies to other places and other algorithms as well. So we with apologies for not leaving us enough time to really kind of dig deep into the meta. I shouldn't use meta anymore. Facebook's stolen that. The larger ramifications of all this. Thomas, I'm going to leave you with one question that we have time for here. So how do they choose topics that are offered to me? Let's use Alan as an example. We just looked at all these lists of things that are generated from my different interactions online. But if people are still confused about how that list is generated, what can you tell them?
I think the simplest version is in every app you use, for the most part, on almost every website you go to, there's code running in the background that is noting that you were on that page, and it's taking notes essentially about what you're doing on that website, what you're clicking on, what you're buying, what you're adding to your cart, what links are you sending to your friends, what websites are you going to, and then that expands into the real world. Like, where are you going, right? Did you go to the mattress store on a Tuesday after seeing an ad on a Monday, right? Did you purchase XYZ products on your credit card? Are you the kind of person like Alan, like they make assumptions about, well, we know your age, we know where you live, we know the kinds of places you commute every day. What kind of person is he usually, right? What are the typical political beliefs of someone who lives in a zip code? What kinds of things does this person usually buy? It's all basically a giant statistics game where they're making guesses about how close can we get to making a guess about what particular things that you're interested in. So what you're seeing essentially is the result of this giant math equation when they're taking data points about all these different moments in your life and trying to put them together with this complicated algorithm to figure out what things you are and aren't interested in. And we're only just starting to understand how it works.
So your homework is to go out and break something. Go out and change some piece of that chain and see how it manifests. See whether or not you can see direct changes in your own life based on that. I know that Thomas has to bounce exactly at 4. He's on to another interview of very important things. So Thomas, thank you very much for being here. I'm going to wrap up over the next 2 minutes or so, but feel free to jump on. Then I will say again that we are going to be sending a follow-up email. We would love to know what topics you want to see in future workshops, but you should first go back and look at all the past workshops, which is at action.consumerreports.org/events. This workshop will be reflected there at about, I'll say tomorrow at about this time. And that's also when you should expect the email, the omnibus email with all of the links, ideas, things that Thomas has generated, and ways that you can begin to go in and break your individual advertising chain. I wish that there were a single silver bullet that solved all of our advertising problems. There isn't, but I think together as we learn more about how these algorithms work, and I want to leave you all with the idea or the message that your privacy and your attention are still worth fighting for. So take the time and see how much of control you can go back and get over the stuff that you work on and see every day. And with that, thank you all very much for the time. Glad that people got something out of this, and sorry for those of you who asked excellent questions that we didn't get to. We will see what we can follow up for next time. I will be saving the chat right now, so don't worry for those of you who are saying, how do you save the chat? I can send it around as I send around all of the other moving parts of what we just did. Thank you all very much for the time. Thank you, Amira. Thank you, Calvin. And we'll look forward to helping out more when we can figure out more things for you all to do.